and welcome to Sunrise Daily. It's 23 degrees in Abuja. Welcome to the show. I'm Kayla Magwa.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. Today is September 18, 2024. It's a Wednesday morning and I bid you welcome. So where are you taking us this morning, Kayla?
Well, like I said yesterday, we will not stop talking about Maiduguri. We're not going to move on from it. And this is at the city center in Maiduguri before all of this flooding happened, just so we can get a view of what Maiduguri used to look like and what we hope it would go back to looking like. There, the city center in Maiduguri. Of course, you can see, these houses, many of them right now are submerged. And we've been talking, Ayo, about the real issue of diseases that come with flooding and what all the agencies that are supposed to do something about that should be doing right now. Let's not wait until there's some cholera outbreak, until a group of people have died, until we say, oh, there's an outbreak somewhere. Let's not wait until that happens before actual action is taken, and of course, looking at these, for the people who live in these areas, if they're watching right now, it will be a sad sight, to remember when your house wasn't flooded, when everything was okay, and of course, the blame game has continued over the past few days, but the accountability of the situation in Borno will not stop. And the media, myself included, we were doing everything to ensure that those who dropped the ball in this situation are brought to book. It's a very trying time. And for those of you who are watching right now from Maiduguri, by the way, it's 27 degrees in Maiduguri this morning with a humidity of 82%. And the wind is at 8 kilometers per hour in Maiduguri this morning. We hear that the water is receding and things are about to get a little better, some sort of respite from that excessive flooding. But, if you're watching from Maiduguri, know that our prayers are with you and we hope that things are done right and that your life goes back to normal, Ayo.
Well, just to be clear, even days after the flooding, we understand that, well, it's not all of the of Maiduguri that is flooded. It's just that quite some, in fact, the way it is being stated on Al Jazeera, for instance, is that half the city is underwater. And if you go to channelstv.com on our website, you'll also find out that some of these areas that we are showing you have also been submerged underwater. And it is not a sight that we want to see, but unfortunately, it is our reality. Yesterday I made a call. I said, look, let's have donations to the people of Maiduguri. Well, it is in the news that quite a number of people have been given to the city. We understand that, for instance, quite a number of people have been handing some stuff to the people of Maiduguri. Alhaji Dantata, we understand, gave 1 billion naira, according to information in the media. The House of Representatives gave 100 million naira, according to media reports, and the senators also have given 74 million naira so far. We understand that the presidential candidate of the Labour Party and his running mate also gave 50 million naira. We need more donations. So we know that the president has made some commitments, with the vice president also made some commitments. How about you? We expect that corporate Nigeria, because there's something that I have seen, Kayla, about Nigeria, about Nigerians, and that is that we love ourselves and we are brothers keepers. So while we do our bit to ensure that whoever it is that dropped the ball is not left off the hook, let's spare thoughts, let's spare love, let's spare a hand for the people who are suffering for situations that they had no control over, they had no hand in, they were not expecting that it was going to happen, but it is right there, the experience that they're having right now. So let the love continue, let the show of love continue, and let Nigeria continue to grow greater.
Very commendable. We're seeing this show of love from all over the country. But just so we can plan ahead, the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, that's NISA, they've issued a flood alert to Nigerians. The management of the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon is going to begin regulated water releases into the country. And I think it's starting on the 17th of September. That's when it's going to start. 11 states are on alert. Not much damage is expected, but you should, if you're part of those 11 states, maybe you should start to plan ahead. If there are people who are living on floodplains or living in places where they can be really affected by the situation, then maybe start to move them out right now and plan ahead. So that's from NISA this morning. And of course, we're hoping that everything works out right. We don't want to see Maiduguri happen anywhere else in this country.
Just to also add to that, Kayla, it's the fact that there are some state governments that have been telling their people to not build on floodplains, and unfortunately, these things happen.
Move from the place,
and you also remember that in one of these days we spoke about the fact that some people do not want to leave their quote ancestral homes. Some people in Kogi, if you remember the flooding that happened in Kogi, we understand that there are some people who said they wouldn't move, even though there were so many entreaties to them. They was not going to move because it was their ancestral homes. But how about your ancestral lives? So let's find a way to appeal to our people wherever it is that they are. The floods waters are going to be released. The waters will be released. We hope there will be no flooding. But there are some areas that it happens every year. If these things are going to happen, please let us ensure we do our level best to ensure that there are no loss of lives and property. So if the flood waters are going to be released and some people are going to be affected, let them know ahead that these are the consequences of not leaving, the places where they are, because the flood waters may get there. But unfortunately, climate change is a reality.
Ayo, every rainy season is the litmus test of what governments, especially at the states, which I know you like to talk about, subnationals and their roles in governance. And every year, the rainy season is the absolute test of what you've done in the past 1 year as governor. What listening have you done? Because these particular agencies, NIMET, NEMA, all of them, they take their time to say, this is what we're expecting this year. You need to plan for this and this and this. And for many years, we have noticed that many state governors don't do anything. They just wait until the flood comes and then they say, oh, my people are suffering, we need money, billions have gone away in the flood. I know that sometimes, floods are natural disasters. It's a little difficult for you to predict them. But you can do what's necessary. Ensure that building codes are adhered to in your states. Get the people to be on board with you. Let them understand the reason why they have to do the right thing. It's for their good. It's for your good. And of course, just as a legacy, really, for you as a state governor, what can I do to ensure that my state is safe when the rainy seasons come? All right. Well, those are some of the opening remarks that we have about the rainy season and what we're dealing with. Ayo, are we getting ready for the papers now?
Yes, just before then, let's also know, since you're talking about subnationals, Business Morning on Sunrise Daily is going to be looking at something in that regard. And they will be talking about how the states, the subnationals, can ease the cost of living. Subnationals' role in easing cost of living crisis. That's coming on the next hour, at the top of the next hour, 10 o'clock Business Morning on Sunrise Daily will be on for 30 minutes. In the meantime, as you said, Kayla, let's take a look at some of the issues in the dailies today.
Fuel and related issues are still very much in the news today. Vanguard newspaper begins with NNPCL Dangote. Fresh dispute emerges over supply volume. That story has the details on page 5. NNPC hints of undersupply from Dangote. We have delivered 111 million liters. That's from Dangote. Excess supply looms as NNPC imports 135 million liters, while oil marketers cannot import lift from Dangote, according to NNPCL. FG should provide welfare packages. That's from CPPE. Details of that story on the inside pages. Business Day newspaper. Marketers yet to lift Dangote petrol from NNPC over price. What does that mean? Well, the details you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. A related story is on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. Petrol price, NNPCL not usurping our powers. That's from NMDPRA. It's not a regulator, cannot fix prices. Ipman looks out for official notification. FG may reduce costs by cutting taxes, deductions. That's from sources. The details of that story you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And look at this one on the front page of Daily Independent. CBN says external reserves at risk on back of fuel subsidies cuts. Defies NAS, maintains FG Ways and Means advances at 5%. Warns security infrastructural issues may worsen inflationary pressures. The details continue on the inside pages of the paper this morning. The Daily Times newspaper has this on its front page. FCT residents panic over tremors as experts urge prompt evacuation. That story is on page 2 of the paper this morning. Blueprint newspaper has end terrorism now. You have no excuses. Danjuma tells the service chiefs. Troops neutralize 4 bandits, rescue 20 captives in Kaduna. NCCSALW to destroy over 30,000 arms ammunition. We're ready to restore peace, CDS assures. The details continue on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Look at the front page of the Guardian newspaper. World Patient Safety Day. Nigeria battles spike in medical errors, negligence in hospitals. And look at the riders. After 8 chemo sessions, 25 rounds of chemotherapy, single mastectomy, cancer diagnosis turns out an error. That's according to a patient. Wow. Diagnostic errors responsible for 16% of patients' harm. Practitioners blame lack of standard infrastructure for quality care. We're a dumping ground for quackery, fake, substandard, unvalidated kits and devices. That's according to AMLSN president. The details of that story you'll find on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. The front page of the Nigerian Tribune. PDP BOT meets Wike behind closed doors. You can't set Bauchi on fire. Governor dares FCT minister. Insists PDP Governors Forum stands by Fubara. That story is on page 5. Nigerian News Direct. Hardship. FAC August allocation to government tiers drops by 11.4% as all tiers share 1.203 trillion naira. Oil revenue slump, FX fluctuation responsible. The details of that story you'll find on the inside pages of the paper. And these are the papers we have for you this morning.
Let's start off with the Daily Trust newspaper. Quite a lot going on there. Quite a lot going on the pages of every newspaper in this country at this moment. But the Daily Trust is where we'll be starting from today. That flood alert that we talked about in the beginning part of the program is on page 3 of the Daily Trust newspaper. So you can actually go get that story on the federal government issuing flood alerts as Cameroon opens up Lagdo Dam. The education is also on the front page there. The federal government to split Unity colleges into basic secondary schools. And the Maiduguri flood also on the front page there. Dantata donates 1.5 billion naira. NEDC 3 billion to victims. You can get those details on page 8. But the major headline there is the petrol price. NNPCL is not usurping our powers, says the NMDPRA. Now, yesterday we had Mr. Laolu Akonde on the program, and he gave some really strong remarks to the NMDPRA about their roles as regulators and what they're doing in the wake of the situation we find ourselves in the oil sector, with especially when it comes to pricing. And those were some really hard words from Mr. Laolu Akonde, but his opinions. And now we're seeing them trying to defend themselves, saying that the NNPCL is not usurping our powers. It's not a regulator, cannot fix prices. Ipman looks out for official notification, and the federal government can reduce costs by cutting taxes and deductions, according to sources. Page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper carries most of these details, and just so I can get some of that for you, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, saying that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has not usurped its powers in determining the price of petrol in the country, and that's coming from Engineer Farouk Ahmed, who's the Chief Executive Officer of NMDPRA. Speaking in the wake of the insinuations that the NNPCL had taken over one of the agency's key functions. And he told the Daily Trust newspaper that the market forces are strictly responsible for determining the price of petrol in line with the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act, that's the PIA of 2021. This issue of pricing when it comes to petrol in this country and well, the availability and the pricing, those are the major issues. Yes, there's so many ups and downs and so many complicated twists and turns, but ultimately, can I afford petrol? That's just how the Nigerian is looking at it. Okay, we get it. This is the issue here, that is the issue there. In fact, we're even seeing from other papers where there's some fresh dispute. I think the Vanguard is carrying that NNPCL and Dangote fresh dispute emerges over supply volume. That's from page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. But whatever way you want to slice this, how do I afford petrol? I just need to be able to afford it. That's what it is. Is it available? Can I afford it? What can be done to push the price down? I need to be able to move on with my life, because this sector has really made us feel like, there's a lot going on in here that needs clarification. It's too murky, it's too cloudy. There's a lot that needs to be laid bare. And as we heard from many people, including our guest yesterday, the president has to wield the big stick. He is the Minister of Petroleum. Okay, so that's an opportunity right there. How do we fix it? It's a legacy project. I keep talking about legacy projects, and that's because as a politician, as someone in government, you want to be able to do something that you would always be remembered for. How about the unbundling or the clarification of everything going on in NNPCL? That would be something that the Nigerian will be very grateful for. Let us understand this industry, find out if there are stakeholders or players, like we were told, who are trying to take advantage of the situation or who have created a chaos that they benefit from. We need to be able to get that clarification. And the president, it's your turn, sir. Ayo.
Well, my take this morning, those are very valid comments that you have made, but I'm very particular about what's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper today. And it's talking about the World Patient Day, which was World Patient Safety Day, which was yesterday, by the way. And if you look at the one of the headlines, it says that patients, Nigeria battles spike in medical errors, negligence in hospitals. And one of the headlines there, Kayla, if you look at it you see it says after 8 chemo sessions, 25 rounds of radiotherapy, single mastectomy, they eventually found out that the cancer diagnosis was an error. I don't know what to make of that. And as if that was not bad enough, if you look on the front page of that same paper, right under the story about, Mr. Wike, you'll find that the Lagos State government is also making a statement saying that their misdiagnosis costs patients 40% more for healthcare. Now the question is, who is asking the questions? Who is paying attention to these things, especially at the time when we're talking about the high cost of living? We know that medications are expensive. Those who are, treating diabetes or hypertension now, they will tell you that things aren't so easy. Alternative medicine, of course, you can imagine how high up there the costs of that would be. But even for the regulated, medical practice in Nigeria, these are the kind of things that you hear. And you just wonder exactly who is asking the question. So yesterday was World Patient Safety Day, and these are the findings in the papers today. What has been your own experience you may want to share with us? The email address and X handle will be on your screen shortly. And then let's see if we can give some attention to these and call out all the authorities, both at the federal level and at the state levels, so that the needful can be done to ensure that you don't waste money that you don't need to waste on medical care. In the meantime, let's take a short break, and when we return, it's time for us to take out the issues we have lined up for you today.
Lessons from My Military Service by retired Major General Solomon Udonwa. The book is an account of over 3 decades of the retired general's service in the Nigerian Army. The book is then unveiled. The former Chief of Army Staff, General Theophilus Danjuma, is the chairman of the event, and he used the opportunity to give a charge to the service chiefs.
Our number one problem today is security. We must end the banditry and the killings that are going on in our country as soon as possible. The responsibility are on your shoulders. Those of you who are still serving. No excuses. Absolutely no excuses.
In his goodwill message, the Chief of Defense Staff reaffirms the military's commitment to safeguarding the nation.
The armed forces of Nigeria is positioned, is willing, is dedicated and committed in ensuring that we restore peace and security in our own dear country. We will not relent, we shall not be deterred. There are going to be challenges, yes, but that's why we're here. I want to assure you that we have learned a lot from your record. Very, very distinguished senior officers that have modeled us all through the years. We cannot afford to fail, and we will not fail.
The book launch and the remix highlights the urgent need for decisive leadership to address the escalating banditry crisis in the country.
I think I'm looking forward to having that book added to my collection. I need to know where the book is. Because, you know, when it comes to security, it's always a treat to listen to people who have been dealing with this situation almost all of their lives. So that's something I'm looking forward to. But joining us for our conversation on security, consolidating the gains against banditry, we have Mr. Vince Onyekwelo, security expert. Nice to have you here with us, Mr. Vince.
Good morning, Nigerians.
And Captain Bish Johnson, retired personnel of the U.S. Army. Nice to have you with us as well.
Thank you very much.
So let's start off. I'm going to start off with Mr. Johnson, because we've had this conversation before. And at the time, we were worried about the bandit warlords in the Northwest.
Yes.
Let's talk about, so one person has been killed. I'm not going to say his name. So one person has been killed, and many people are seeing that as a gain in the war against banditry. But for other people, they're a little skeptical. Well, it only takes a little bit more time for someone else to come in and take his place. After all, he took someone else's place when someone was killed as well.
Sure.
And then there's there's still so many of them who are still popular and still, still able to carry out their nefarious activities, especially in places like Zamfara, Sokoto, and Katsina. Let's talk a bit about these gains. Are they actual gains, and how do we stop people from taking over from them when they die?
Okay. Well, it's an actual gain in the sense that somebody has already been taken out of the battlefield, particularly when you consider the significance of the individual that was taken out. Now, having said that, because of the economic benefit involved in this thing, this is a cartel, this is a syndicated criminal, economic criminal activity in which some of all these people are involved in illegal gold mining, in which they're making lots of money, plus kidnapping for ransom. So because of the huge gain involved, and considering the fact that the individual that was killed also had some lieutenants that were not amongst those that have been identified to have been killed. So it will only be a matter of time before somebody will rise up and take up their place. If you look around the globe with the way war on terror is being fought, you discover that most times when their commanders are taken out, somebody rises up to the occasion and takes their place. So we have to be very cautious not to let down our guards in the sense that this man had been taken out. Sure, we may have dealt a blow to them right now, but that is only momentarily. It will only be a matter of time. But let me say something here. This war against terrorism and banditry cannot always be only achieved by the military and the police. It cannot always be kinetic. There has to be governance. Kinetic measures cannot take the place of governance in dealing with the issues that we're talking about. That's why sometimes you hear kinetic measures, non-kinetic measures. And non-kinetic measures is mostly about governance and also how we manage our borders so that we control the inflow of small arms and light weapons that have been the weapons of choice for these individuals that have been terrorizing the Northwest. So we cannot mix politics with it. And I've listened to some of the commentaries from politicians, particularly the current governor of Zamfara State, where there seems to be some kind of disconnect between Zamfara state government and the federal government, including our armed forces. There had been that comment that, they were nowhere to be found. There must be that collaboration between the national and the sub-national government for us to be able to achieve a long-lasting peace and stability in these regions, and for us to be able to provide the kind of governance that is required. We can't play politics with it. It's too early for us to start doing 2027 politicking, because having listened to him some few days ago, I see some elements of politicking in which he was attacking or seemed to be criticizing the top HLM of Nigerian military, particularly his predecessor, who is the Minister of State for Defense, who happens to be his predecessor. I was thinking that should even be an added advantage to him, considering the fact that a native of Zamfara is the Minister of State for Defense, that they could have worked hand in hand to be able to figure out what it is that is required to assist him in making sure that his state is stable and peaceful. Because at the end of the day, the governor is the chief security officer of the state. I mean, he was very, and it's not the first time. Yes, we've heard him talk like this. To talk about how he's doing what he can, and with political will, I can get this done. But there are forces that are holding things back. But we'll get to that dynamic in a bit, Mr. Vince. Let's talk a little bit about the non-kinetic areas which he's talked about. Because no matter how many bandit warlords or terrorists you kill, and many people share that view, no matter how many of them you kill or incarcerate, as long as that vacuum in governance exists and poverty is still rife, you will still be able to get these people to commit these crimes. You'll be the place will be a harvesting ground, really, for people who want to carry out these nefarious activities and cause problem in our country.
What's lacking in the non-kinetic measure?
First of all, number one, what's lacking is that understanding that this has become an economical war, that people depend on this banditry and terrorism to make huge gains financially.
A lack of understanding on whose part?
On the part of the federal government, because don't forget that issues about mining is on the exclusive list of the federal government of Nigeria. So basically, you can get license to go and mine in Niger State or in Zamfara State without the state government even knowing who you are.
But the state governor said he has stopped that.
He has stopped that?
He said he stopped that.
So imagine before he stopped that, what it means that people are coming there, ecological pollution is going on. Number two, the idea that these warlords are in other parts of Nigeria doing other sorts of illegal activities. Now we are talking about illegal mining in Zamfara State. In the southeast where I'm from, we call it illegal land grabbing. They go into vast portions of ancestral land, get their bulldozers, bulldoze it, take over, sell them off, and become billionaires overnight. And now issues of ungoverned spaces in Nigeria, it's quite pathetic in this time, in this age, that we have so much ungoverned spaces where you have agberos take over, warlords take over, and you have so many copycats that are looking up to take over from the warlords when they get exterminated. So the bottom line is, I'm happy that the issue of mining licenses has been stopped. Issue of illegal land grab in other parts of Nigeria. But it's very peculiar for us to understand that this particular government is doing well when it comes to the issue of fighting terrorism and banditry.
They are?
Yes. Look at what happened in the South. The vigilantes were able for the first time to stop, arrest, and even kill about 12 or 24 terrorist bandits that they said that were foreigners to Nigeria. In the past couple of years, you will not hear about such in the South. Now look at Zamfara State. One of the main persons is being cut out. And don't forget, I will not mention his name. This person that was taken away has influence financially, wealth-wise. He's a multi-billionaire. He deals on gold. He deals on taxes that you pay for him to give you security or his men. He has people. Most of the top bandits across the Northwest have passed through his tutelage. And also, he has influence about getting ransom from kidnappers. So you see, he's a major part. But taking him out is not the end of the game, because there are copycats that are waiting to fill the vacuum, though they may not be as good and smart as he is. But it's a major blow to their cartel.
I don't want to sound like the bearer of bad news, but it could be better or worse than he is. You know, we never know what the capacity of a person can be until they've gotten the opportunity to. So, Mr. Johnson,
yes.
A step in the right direction, but not really.
Well, you mean by taking out this individual? Of course, anytime you...
A step in the right direction, but not really. If the man has people that he's trained and they're coming up and looking forward to the opportunity to fill his shoes and even be better or worse than him, is there significant progress?
Well, by taking out this individual, let's not underestimate the impact of what has happened here right now with the killing of this particular individual, based on his connections and his contact in terms of sourcing of arms and stuff like that. Is significant. But like I mentioned earlier, he's just one individual. This whole entire operation is more syndicated and is a cartel, and more syndicated than most of us have even realized. They're very organized, and there have been collaboration amongst them, such that if we take out one individual, it will only be a matter of time before another individual comes up.
How do we stop that? How do we stop that from continuing?
Well, the way we stop that from continuing is not just one, it can't just be one hard fix all, right? We have to do a lot of other things. One of which is what I mentioned, ensuring that we are managing our borders very well, because if you look at where they're operating at the margins of our territory. where they will have the, leverage and opportunity to move across borders, right? And their arms are flowing in from the Sahel, Libya, Sahel, and then into Nigeria. So we have to improve our border management, reduce inflow of illegal individuals and illegal small arms and light weapons. We cut that off. Once we cut that off, we can now deal internally with these individuals that may be left within our territory. It's not an easy thing to be. It's not going to be an overnight thing, because this is a problem that had taken some time to grow. And so
what do they want?
Is more of economics, right? Even the indigenous and the natives are also part of this whole thing, not by choice, but because they also have to make a living, and sometimes these people force them into this illegal mining for themselves, so that they can use that to acquire arms. And that's why I said, you see, security does not exist in a vacuum.
Wait, so this is not an ideology situation. This is just crime of opportunity.
Of course, this is an economic crime. It's not an ideological crime like you find with terrorists like Boko Haram and
so with this banditry is purely
economics. Make money. Just what they are doing is just to make money. That's why I said earlier that because of the economic benefits of it, it will be a matter of time before another person rises up and takes the place of this guy.
I mean, I'm going to go back to Mr. Vince. Sorry to cut you there.
Okay.
And the notion that it is an economic crime and a crime of opportunity it's evident. You see them on TikTok. You see these terrorists. They're almost acting like rappers. They put the money on their chest and then they film themselves, and the audacity of doing that. Now I know that everything's about narratives, right? So in many ways, those videos and things supposed to weaken our morale or make us upset. Then we now start to shout at the military, and that also brings down their morale. But what can be done? Because for Nigerians, when we see those videos on social media, we're like, well, this person posted this. Why can't you catch this person?
First of all, in policing, there's what we call the 3 Ds. You detect a crime, you try to deter the crime, and then you try to disrupt the crime. Now Nigeria has added the strength of propaganda. Now, the Nigerian government have been able to detect who these guys are. We all know their faces. We all know their aliases because they're not using their real names, okay? Now, for example, one of their top guys has been taken out, so they have disrupted that particular person. Now, one of their warlords right now is on the run, okay? I don't want to mention his name. So they have distracted his operations. So when you look at the 3 Ds, detect, deter, disrupt, you see that in line, one of them has been taken away. Not one of them, some of them have been taken away in the past 1 month or thereabout. Some of them are on the run. Now, we don't see those TikTok videos making the rounds anymore. At least as of now, they're not making the rounds anymore, okay? And it also shows the lack of tech strength that we have in the nation, whereby we cannot use IP addresses of where those TikTok if videos came out from, because we have that kind of power to use IP address to track. If you listen to the governor of Zamfara, when he said that, even that particular dossier, the memo that claimed that they're supporting, sponsoring some people.
He said it was a fake memo.
He said he has the IP address where he came from. So the same way, those TikToks we are seeing, we can use the IP to know where they came from, to know who registered the SIM card, to even...
Why isn't it being done?
Even to use geospatial to detect where those phones are operating. So it shows that we still have a long way to go. And don't forget, these guys are very smart.
Wait, we don't have the capability to track it?
I think we are very much behind in capability. Look at
Vince, if they were looking for you, they'd find you.
If they have the willpower to find me, they can. But
it's a willpower issue?
Yes. And if you know how to protect yourself tech-wise, they won't be able to find you. Most people are not highly trained, with all due respect. I've been able to train some of them. Okay. Most of them don't know even what they are doing. I know where most of them, you see, a governor's convoy, his aides, security men are pressing mobile phone. They're on WhatsApp, and you're supposed to be in operation mode, but they're pressing WhatsApp on an AC air-conditioned vehicle. So many of them are not very focused in doing their job because they're opportuned to be working for a governor. So the orientation of our security agencies are not tip-top. They are more like, oh, they wanted me to work for DSS or for the police, but they don't have the willpower in there to go the job, get the phone. How can you be on my aid as a governor and you're on your phone? No, you lose the job because you're supposed to have a radio That's what I need you to be connected to, not your phone. So I think our orientation in Zamfara in Nigeria has to be to help our security agencies. We train them. As a former British police officer, every year we pass through several trainings. But in Nigeria, many people don't know what that is. All they believe in is firearm. But firearm should be the last resort. They don't think, they don't look at the big picture, they don't preempt, they don't train, they don't learn, they don't read. But when it comes to roughing a civilian, they become champions.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to dealing with criminals, they become lapdogs. It's unfortunate. So what's going on in Zamfara State can say, it's working for me. I like it. Because the criminals are no longer on the front foot. They are now on their back foot. It's a good sign. If that can be continued by the wonderful job the Minister for State of Defense is doing, the wonderful job federal government are doing, Chief of Staff, Chief of Defense Staff, and also the Governor of Zamfara State, they need to have more collaboration.
I mean, that brings me to my next conversation.
The elders of Zamfara State need to do more work to bring their sons together. There should be elders that can call the Governor of Zamfara State, call the Minister of State of Defense, and bring them together and talk to them. It's about the people of Zamfara. It's not about their personal differences.
I mean, that actually brings, because Mr. Johnson had mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, sure.
This relationship between Mr. Dowd and Mr. Matawale. And you know, for many people, if that impasse is not fixed, you're all talking to yourselves.
Yes.
Because it will just continue as the year. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I do agree with that, and which is why I said that, look, there's only an extent that security agents can do, right? The security agents will not provide the necessary governance that is required. Because the reason why these bandits are being successful is because there is high level of poverty in Nigeria. And there is definitely high level of poverty in these states where these things are thriving, the illegal mining. You know, the illegal mining is at the center of this whole problem that we have. And so these people found a means of livelihood. They work for these bandits and make their own source of livelihood from these bandits. Now, if you have a situation where governance is provided, right, some of the people that are involved in this illegal mining will not be there. So that's why it's important. Let me tell you, there is no person that has gone into office that did not meet challenges there. And even if you stay there 8 years and you leave, you will still leave some challenges behind.
I mean, listening to the governor, you know, talking about this a few days ago and talking about how money, it was mostly money.
Exactly.
He said there wasn't even up to 4 million left in those coffers. And then, of course, he said, look at how much was stolen, where there's so much that is, you know, I mean, as a former governor, you know, and with the EFCC matter, as a former governor, with all of these things being said by someone who's coming in after me, of course, I would feel some type.
Yes, there will be that bad blood.
But that bad blood now, you know, is it so bad that they can't put it away and focus on the lives and security of the people of that state? It
depends on the governor, because right now the governor is the chief security officer of the state, and it seems like he's engaging in a media campaign against his predecessor. And if you look into Zamfara State very well, I know a little bit about Zamfara State, you know, it's not one of the richest states in Nigeria, right? It's a rural state. I've been there a few times. In fact, even when Matawale was in office, I was privileged to even be in Zamfara State. I talked to a lot of people, right? Zamfara State, throughout the period that Matawale was in office, Zamfara State only received about let's see, what's the figure? They received about 354 billion naira. This is from FAAC, from VAT, from IGR, loan, grant, and any other sundry revenue. And out of that, Mr. Matawale paid salaries and other allowances costing about 136 billion, 800 million naira for 4 years. And with a balance of 109 billion, 829 million, 860,000 naira in his 4 years. And so, if this is how much is received, where's the 200?
Where's the figure from?
This is from FAAC.
Okay, from FAC.
From FAC, yes. And so, if that is the case, where is the 200 and something billion naira that he's talking about is from? And they even talked about the issue of, this is not the time to talk about the issue of the monies that were paid for NECO and WAEC.
I mean, we'll get to that shortly, because the governor was very vocal about those, and we do have to go on a short break. When we come back, The conversation will continue. Ayo has a few questions for them as well. Stay with us.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Let me begin with you, Mr. Nyakwelu. I remember in 2018 when we hosted you on this same program, you said, and I quote, "With the current structure we have in the Nigerian Army, operations and leadership, I do not see the fight against insurgency ending anytime soonest." If we juxtapose that comment of 2018 with the comment of General T.Y. Danjuma at that event of yesterday, when he was also saying that the military needed to end the banditry because he knew that they had everything and that there was no excuse. Do you still maintain that comment of 2018, or you think there has been a bit of improvement over the years?
If I heard you well, you're talking about the statement of former General Danjuma and about his statement about the military has what they need to have to be able to see the job done. I totally believe that the general has enough information on his table to make such statements because they do a lot of collaboration internally and outside the country also. So basically, I believe as of today, the military is best posed to stop banditry in Nigeria. Why do I say that? Number one, for example, the way His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, selected his cabinet about security, I kind of like it because somebody like the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, who happens to be from Kaduna State, I believe it's only somebody who has a mental problem, seeing what his people has passed through in Kaduna State for the past 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that would not stamp his feet straight to end this thing, whether it's in Kaduna State or outside Kaduna State. I think he's on the pivotal stage to stop it. And number two, having other cabinet chiefs, military chiefs, and the police leadership, and then having a president who I think is very dynamical. He is very strategic because he's a successful person as a businessman. And the businessman sees things differently from a civil servant like the past president. So I believe they have the kind of president leadership, they have the kind of military chiefs, and then they have a governor in Zamfara, for example, who is very smart, who is very eloquent, although a bit of angry. So I think if we can bring the wonderful job Mr. President is doing in selecting of his military chiefs, bring the wonderful effort the Minister of State of Defense, Matawale, is doing, bring the effort of the governor of Zamfara State to set up what they call the CPU. I think it has to do with their new vigilante style they have in Zamfara State. Bring all these things together with the generals of the Nigerian military. I think with the police service, they have what it takes for the first time, because there's no issue of ethical bigotry. There's no issue of bias, again, involved in how you handle this bandits and these criminals. In the past, there were so many schools of thought that believe they are being sympathetic because of ethical or ethnical bigotry, but it's no longer in the picture. So, and that's one of the good kudos I can give to Mr. President and Mr. Matawale and then Mr. Dauda in Zamfara State, for them to bring the skills with Mr. Musa, the Chief of Defense Staffs, and then the IGP of Police to kill this once and for all. But they cannot achieve this if they don't do A, check the borders, B, stop the idea of ungoverned spaces, 3, allow illegal mining or illegal land banditry or any kind of illegal activities going, because they've made money from the illegal activities. They can now be able to buy people in power. They need to stop these three things. And I think they'll be successful, at least significantly successful, if not 100% successful.
Now, you have also raised from your response now something about how the communities can actually play a role. I mean, because when you talk about securing the borders of Nigeria are in the various communities. They are in the local governments, they are in the wards, political wards, and all those things. So is there a role for those communities, and what are those roles And add that to the comment that has been made by political leaders that, you know, some of these issues that we're having are actually more political than security or whatever else it is.
Yes, there are. Let me start from the last statement you made. There is a strong element of politics and also strong elements of strategy. Now, in the elements of politics, you have been following the current governor of Zamfara State, well-spoken gentleman. You could hear him calling figures off his head. As a corporate analyst, I would have expected him to come with documents, that shows that the current Minister of State of Defense left only 4 million naira in the accounts of Zamfara State. I would love to see a document, a bank statement that says that. That's number one. Number two, paying billions to WAEC. I want to see an official document saying that. Number three, paying billions to NECO. I want to see an official document saying that. So you don't come to play politics. That's what I see. Because when you call those figures, it's make-believe, but I want to see the official documents of 4 million naira left in the account of Zamfara State. So that is politics. Number two, the issue of the role of the communities in all this. I think the governor of Zamfara State mentioned that he set up what he called the CPU. It's more like a vigilante team that we are part of the success stories we are hearing about Zamfara State of today. They are part of the people that chased the so-called criminal that was arrested. So basically, the vigilante and communities cannot do much if the federal government and the state government and the local government are not doing theirs. What can they do? We can actually take a project to map out all the exit points and entrance points in and out of Nigeria. It can take 6 months, it can take 8 months. Once we map out these exits, know the local government it belongs to, the state it belongs to, we can now plan how can we collaborate between the masses, the vigilantes, local government, and the state, and then sort of federal government. So we're doing this. We can set up official checkpoints, not Agbero manned checkpoint in our national borders. It must be immigration or army or navy. It has to be professionally set up. So we can say we know who is coming in and what kind of gadgets or weapons are coming to our nation. Because it's very dangerous for us to expect the communities to do that. They don't have the technology, they don't have the funding, they don't have the training. So the federal and the state have to lead the local government and then the communities.
Okay, well, now that's also, it's very interesting, you know,
a mapping.
My apologies, Mr. Yekulu. It's actually very interesting that you talk about, you know, the role of the federal, state, and local governments in the communities. First of all, we can say that the closest to the communities will be the local governments. So let me take that to you, you know, Captain Johnson. Part of the efforts of the federal government to ensure that we engage the local governments is ensuring financial autonomy for the local governments. Do you see that playing a role? Because security officials such as yourselves have said at some point that the first line of defense for us in our nation is the local government. And if we can get the local government working, then maybe we're on the road to getting our security right. Do you agree with that school of thought?
100%, Ayo. And I say 100% is because we are old enough to realize when our local government we are functioning. You see, part of the problems that we have in Nigeria, which are the things that are leading to this insecurity, is the lack of, viable local government administration. There is a reason why the drafters of our constitution deemed it necessary that there should be a third tier of government, which is the one that is closest to the people. Now, when we have a situation where that tier of government becomes inactive or not effective because the governors had hijacked them, that is part of what is leading to lack of governance. And the insecurity we are talking about is very, very directly related to governance issues. And so having a viable, functional local government is part of the equation in solving the problem of insecurity that we have in Nigeria. So I am happy that the president is working hard to ensure that we have this local government autonomy. But we can't achieve 100% local government autonomy right now so long as the states conduct local government elections by themselves, because it's only the party in power at the state that is going to win those elections. And they will continue to do the same thing that they're doing before this time. So in addition to achieving the Supreme Court victory, we need to have an independent national body that will conduct local government elections so that people from opposition parties can also win elections. Because let me tell you, there will be no democracy if you don't have a strong and viable opposition.
I mean, it's interesting, a lot of the things that we've talked about this morning, you know, the many layers of insecurity in Nigeria and bringing this particular area, this local government autonomy, because that is one of the reasons why everyone was pushing for local government autonomy, is because, you know, crime is local.
Yes.
And terrorism and banditry is at these local levels. But that's all the time that we have. I know it's never enough time to talk about security, but I want to thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Vince Onyekwelo, security expert. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks.
And Captain Bish Johnson, retired person of the U.S. Army. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Business Morning is up next on Sunrise Daily. Stay with us.
Hello, welcome to the second trading day of this holiday shortened week. And we see the markets, the local equities market, starting to open at this hour. But let's get to the top stories that set your agenda for today. We're seeing oil prices steady after rising in the previous two sessions as investors are awaiting the U.S. Federal Reserve's anticipated interest rate cut, with potential for more violence in the Middle East, and that's, you know, supporting the market at this time. Supply disruptions and what's happening with growth. Is the U.S. Fed going to cut rates by maybe 25 basis points or 50? And some say maybe a distant 75 basis points, but who knows if that's going to happen. Brent crude, $73.67 a barrel, 3 cents down early trade today. WTI, that's the U.S. grade, and we see the spread between Brent and WTI. That's closing up at this point, $71.08, down 0.2%. And you know, there's just this downward pressure when it comes to the price of oil. Both contracts gained about $1. That was yesterday on lingering supply disruptions in the U.S. That's the world's biggest oil producer after Hurricane Francine. And we see traders bet that demand may increase following what would be the Fed's first interest rate cut in 4 years. Quite incredible. I've been waiting for this moment when most of these central bankers will start reporting interest rate cuts. I'm waiting to hear that in Nigeria, but definitely inflation is not being that friendly at this point to see that actually happen. So that's that with the oil market. Let's find out what's happening with the Naira against the dollar. We see the first trade for the week. There was high appetite for the greenback. That's the US dollar, 7.12%. That was the close yesterday for the after the holidays. We see there was a lot of appetite for the dollar, 1,656 Naira. That's the close for yesterday, from 1,546 Naira. That was for Friday. So NAFEX, there was also weakness there, but much lower than what we had in the NAFEM window, 1.41%. So we're seeing the Naira kicking off the week quite weak. And hopefully we see some kind of intervention from the central bank maybe today to help defend the Naira at this point. So all the stories, what's the government sharing? A sum of 1.2 trillion Naira that's been shared to the federal government, states, local government councils as revenue for the month of August. That's by the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee. According to a document from the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, the amount represents 11.9% decline against the 1.35 trillion Naira total revenue shared in July. A brief breakdown of the distribution shows that the federal government received a lower sum, 374 billion Naira. State governments got 422.86 billion Naira. Local government councils received 306 billion, while the sum of 99.47 billion Naira was shared to the benefiting states as 13% of mineral revenue derivation revenue from the total amount. At the same time, a lower sum of 1.2 billion Naira was received as gross statutory revenue, while the balance in the excess crude account remains unchanged at 473 $6,000. And now we see the central bank says it will sustain its ways and means advances to the federal government at a 5% limit for the 2024-2025 fiscal year in its monetary credit, foreign trade, and exchange policy guidelines for the period released on its website. The CBN says such advances shall be liquidated as soon as possible and shall in any event be repayable at the end of the year which it was granted. The financial market regulator explains that the loan facility through which it finances the federal government's budget shortfalls will be determined by recognizing the sub-accounts of various ministries, departments, and agencies linked to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Meanwhile, the CBN has warned that the country's foreign exchange reserves, which currently stands at $36 billion, is at risk due to the removal of fuel subsidy and lower crude oil earnings. In a statement released, the Apex Bank also mentioned that increased external debt servicing obligations could pose downside risk for the growth of external reserves during the period. However, the CBN says the outlook for Nigeria's external sector this year and 2025 is optimistic on the expectation of favorable terms of trade, sustained rally in crude oil prices, even though we're seeing it down, improvement in domestic crude oil production, as well as gains from capital flows and remittances. And we see the Enugu State government has signed a memorandum of understanding with Jalfa Nigeria Limited for the revitalization of the Sunrise flour mill located at Emene, Enugu. We're performing the function of the government house in Enugu. Governor Peter Mbah reaffirms his administration's commitment in moving the state from a public sector-driven economy through result-oriented partnerships and also make the state an investment-friendly destination. Governor Mbah also said that the investment size of the project is about 40 billion naira, with Jalfa Group injecting 24 billion naira into the project. Take a listen.
Enugu State securing another investment size of 40 billion. Again, this investment will see Jalfa Group injecting 24 billion into the existing Enugu Sunrise flour mill. 22 billion will be directly into the revamping and the resuscitation of the Sunrise flour mill, and 2 billion is going to come to the state by way of cash, right? And in addition to that, we also have a plan. The SPV is going to own 10,000 hectares of farmland where we're going to cultivate the inputs for the flour mill. We're going to be with you every step of the way. We understand what it means for businesses to invest in our state. We know also that businesses are here for returns on investment. So it's our job to make sure that you achieve that aspiration.
All right, now to our first conversation. The rising cost of living has been a significant challenge for many households. And I'm eager to understand how state governments are working to alleviate the burden on its citizens. Recent inflation data shows headline inflation. That was the highest in Bauchi State. If you can put that up for me. Food inflation was highest in Sokoto State, while Bayelsa was the lowest at 33%. Even though we know that Benue, that's most of the food basket at this point, but we still see food inflation was high there. So states with the highest inflation rise for August, and we see Bauchi leading at 46%. That's on a year-on-year basis. So we see the pressure even at the subnational level. Join us now to unpack this. We have Mr. Christian Udechukwu, who is the Commissioner for Industry, Anambra State Government, joining me right here in the studio. Good morning. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laddie.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
It's fantastic to have you. And definitely sometimes I just ponder. I wonder what it feels like, to have stable prices. I don't remember when last, I actually experienced that in Nigeria. It's been a while. And seeing the inflation rates we're getting used to now at the subnational level and nationally, we're seeing, states like Bauchi State with about 46% inflation. And I'm wondering how the subnationals looking at what is really causing high prices, this cost of living crisis that we're experiencing in Nigeria right now?
Well, as I'm sure you know, the economy has been under stress, Nigerian economy. And that obviously is also partly a result of ripples of global inflationary pressures that has reached our shores, which is made even more complicated by some of the local dynamics of the Nigerian economy. We have had productivity issues, we've had power generating issues, and there has been recently a lot of logistics challenges to do with fuel distribution, leading to upward price pressure on transportation and related house rents and food prices and so on. The multiplier effect of the challenges of predicting the environment is what's actually driving the pressure on prices, as you see. If we have stable petrol supply, for example, then there will be stability of prices. People won't shut down their fuel stations. And if the fuel stations don't get shut down, then you'll have stability in the cost of transportation, and similarly, stability in the food supply. If you have stability in food supply, then it means, of course, there are no speculation on the cost of food and the availability of food. If there is a disruption in the petrol supply chain, which disrupts the supply of food and the cost of transporting them to the different states, then food prices are likely to be stable, even when they move up because of cyclical effects of the planting and harvesting seasons. You will have stability in the environment. So in Anambra State, actually, we are dealing with these matters more differently.
Looking at Anambra State, it's right there, 33.90%.
Well, I can tell you the pressure on that is even going lower and lower, in part because of a lot of the policies that the government is pursuing. What we are doing in Anambra is really revolutionary in many respects. We have a government in Anambra State that is people-focused. Our governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, spends a lot of time thinking how to relieve the pressure of the present economy on the people of Anambra State. And so, for example, so many things that will be putting pressure, expense pressure on families, we're addressing. In education, for example, we're offering free education for all children in primaries and secondary school up to SS3. It means that families don't have to worry now about spending money in school. There are no levies for anything. There are no charges for tuition or any kind of levy.
Because there are a lot of parents right now having to deal with the headache of
paying school fees. Yes, exactly. No, that headache is gone. It's not there in Anambra State. Now. Or any child that is in a public school in Anambra, their parents don't have to worry about school fees. They don't feel the pressure of children going back to school. Okay? And what that does really is that the parents have extra money in their pocket to deal with the pressure of inflation on food prices, for example. Also, similarly, in the healthcare sector, we also have free medical healthcare for mothers, natal care, prenatal, postnatal care, and the prescription drugs, including if the mother goes through, a lady goes through a surgery, giving birth and all that. It's free. It's all free. So in a situation, for example, where a nursing mother goes to a hospital and has a baby, often the medical bills run into millions of naira. The state government writes it off. We write it off in Anambra. We give free prescriptions. And so what we're doing in the education sector and in the healthcare sector is the government is putting money back into the pockets of families. Okay? And then additionally, beyond that, we are also ensuring that people are able to move around a little bit more freely and in safety. So that means that our goal in Anambra under the governor is to build a smart megacity. A smart megacity means a place where you are able to get from any location to another location within a fixed time frame of anywhere between 30 minutes to 1 hour. We have 21 local governments and 179 communities in Anambra State. And making mobility easy is a very important component of the governor's agenda to ensure that people are able to move around
and going back to, the free education, free health care, I'm wondering, how's the government able to fund this? Is it through taxes or about debt?
No. It's through prudent financial management. Governor Suludo calls it doing more with less. Okay? Zero borrowing. I mean, in the last 2 years now, going to, by next year, March, it will be 3 years, the government of Anambra State has borrowed zero from any financial institution. And if you compare historically the budget of Anambra State in dollar terms, perhaps, and we look at the Naira component perhaps has been rising, but in dollar terms, in terms of what it is able to buy, it's able to buy less. Perhaps 12 years ago, or perhaps even 16 years ago, the budget would have been anywhere between $1.2 to $2 billion, depending on the variable exchange rate. Today, we have less than $300 million, and we're doing phenomenal work with it. I mean, it's like magic. Like you say, the government should be harvesting money from education, harvesting money from health, but we're putting it back in the pockets of the people.
And talking about putting money in the pockets of the people, we know we still have that lingering issue when it comes to minimum wage. We know how much the 70,000 Naira minimum wage, even though some states are not implementing that now, we know how much of fuel that can get you, maybe about 70-something liters of fuel. And
well, my wife bought fuel the other day for one car at 79,000 to fill the tank, yes.
Over the minimum wage. So how's the state government looking at this? Because at the end of the day, everything is benchmarked to the dollar. You hear fuel prices are up because the Naira has weakened. But when it comes to wage growth is non-existent, at this point, even though we did see about 100%. But when you benchmark that to the dollar, you're not really doing much, with that amount. So how's the government looking at this minimum wage issue? Should we benchmark minimum wage to the dollar?
No, that would be an unhealthy thing to do. The first thing we do in Anambra, first of all, is that we pay salaries promptly. Okay, so whatever your income expectation is, you get it when it is due. The government of Anambra State doesn't owe salary arrears to anybody who is in the ecosystem of the government space system. It also includes contractors, by the way. The other thing that we also do is that we have funds set aside at ASBA, is a small Anambra Small Business Association. They have a dedicated fund there to support MSMEs. We also have funds in my ministry that are available to also support MSME in partnership with the Bank of Industry and all. So we use that to also augment the support to families. For those of them who have adjunct income, the law allows even civil servants who are in business, who are in service, to go into agriculture. Okay, so you can. That's why the president, Obasanjo, had a farm when he was president. I mean, he would on weekends leave the presidency and go to a farm. So what we do have is that we are, as you know, in the last 2 years, you may have heard, we distributed about 2 million palm oil seedlings. Okay, and we also gave out about 500,000 coconut seedlings. We're adding another 1 million this year, and they are high yield varieties that fruit within 3 to 4 years. Now, what that does really is that in the last 2 years, we've been able to reach around 150,000 households. It's a zero poverty program. It is designed to lift the families that benefit from these seedlings out of poverty. Okay, so what this program does really is that it is aimed at ensuring that families that are able to nurture these trees in front of their homes, in the backyard, in the gardens, and so on, that in the next 3 years, which is in the life of this administration, they start earning income from it, and they'll earn anywhere between $1 million to $2.5 million on a yearly basis, depending on the cost of palm produce at the time. As you know, Nigeria presently spends about $470 billion on red palm oil importation from outside of the country. With the 4 million seedlings that we're expected to hand out between now and the end of the year, at the end of the first term of this administration, we would have been able to claw back significantly that portion, and we're looking to domesticate that fund in Anambra State.
Right, but let's talk about jobs now. At the end of the day, we're in a high interest rate environment, and we know that is not good, for jobs. And I know your principal, he does have experience when it comes to monetary policy. So how are you seeing this high cost of borrowing era? Because at the end of the day, that impacts how businesses can actually do business and actually employ people. So how are you seeing it? It's interest rate setting season right now.
Well, in Anambra State, jobs creation, again, is a very significant matter for the state government. As you know, we have a program to build a brand new city, Anambra Mixed-Use Industrial City, where we've set aside 4,141 hectares of land. We have dedicated spaces, land use spaces in that space for an automotive industrial park, a pharmaceutical industrial park, agro-processing industrial park, a financial center, entertainment center, residential areas for the workers who would work in that industrial city. And it's such a compact space that, we have a walk-to-walk policy for those who are going to be there. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because we are not just looking at solving problem for today. We're looking at creating a sustainable future for the people of Anambra State. In terms of what we're doing today to ensure that, our youths and workspace continues to grow, we have a One Youth, Two Skill program in Anambra State where the last set of youths who benefited from that were about 5,000. Now we have extra recruitment of making the numbers to about 8,000. Now, the previous ones got 400,000 at the end of their skills acquisition program. We set aside another 2.5 billion that was made available to them at low interest, 11% interest. I can 11%. Tell you. Yes, 11. Not the 30, 40% that you get in the commercial sector. So we have development finance available for those who want to go into entrepreneurship. We also have additional dedicated fund of about 2.5 billion in the Anambra Small Business Service that I mentioned earlier. So the governor takes jobs creation very seriously. We also trained 20,000 youths under what we call the Solution Innovation District. It's really about skills acquisition, ICT, because the governor says that knowledge is the currency of the future. If our people are educated, then they are able to create space for themselves in the job space. So we're looking to create employers of labor rather than people who are looking around trying to find jobs somewhere. So we've done 20,000 under the Solution Innovation District in partnership with Microsoft and Wood Lab. And then we're also training people to learn coding. We set a target of 10,000 there. We've done just over 2,500. And again, we're launching a new program. Perhaps the governor will unveil it before the year runs out. We call it Creating the Anambra Digital Tribe. Okay, we're creating an online learning management system that will be able to offer training and skills services to at least 1 million people. Right. And the governor is going to be unveiling that before the year runs out. The point here is that on the industrial side, in economic terms, we're supporting existing industries. Okay, and we're supporting them through procurement. We have a policy in Anambra State where we prioritize, under what we call Made in Anambra, we prioritize procurement from industries that are located within Anambra State. Okay? It is aimed at sustaining their businesses and ensuring that they stay in business and they continue to employ people.
Because businesses right now, they need all the support they can get as consumers. Yes. But we're going to take a breather now. Okay. We're going to drill down on how to get cost of borrowing lower, in most of the country, at this point. But thank you so much. We're going to continue the conversation right after this break. It's still right here, Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're still discussing easing the cost of living crisis at the subnational level. I still have with me Mr. Christian Odechukwu. He's the Commissioner for Industry, Anambra State. Thank you for staying with us. And definitely we're dovetailing from the cost of borrowing at this time, because at the end of the day, the businesses have to spend more on doing business. They will pass that on to the consumers. And I'm still trying to understand how much the average consumer, can take at this point. What would you say is the advice for subnationals right now? Say, you know what? Cost of credit is high. What can you do? What single-digit loans or grants? What can be done at this point? Even though I know the government will complain that funding is an issue.
Well, the spending power is at the discretion of the government at the federal level. And there's a potpourri of information and data that informs their decision making. I imagine that the focus, if the focus is on increased productivity and what will help to ensure that productivity rises, we will begin to see a downward pressure on these inflationary figures that you're showing. We don't necessarily need to cap prices per se.
That hasn't really worked.
Well, yes, because it would seem a little bit repressive. But there are tools that are available to economic decision makers to ensure that when they deploy them, it will be in the interest of all operators in the economy to ensure that they maintain prices at stable levels and then even begin to pressure them downwards. But we have what the structure that we have now doesn't really seem to take that into account because it's more silo-based than an integrated approach to decision making. I'll give you an example. In the United Kingdom, where I've had the privilege of both study and work, when there's inflationary pressure, on a yearly basis, it usually sometimes moves up or moves down. But if it moves up, what the government does really is, there are people who are on fixed income, you know, those who are on welfare systems and so on, and they are usually the bellwether. What the government does is to say, if we have an inflationary rise of 1%, how does that affect their overall quality of life? I mean, what does it push off their shopping basket? Okay, that 1% inflationary rise. So what they do then is, they then look at all the components that inform that base point for their weekly allowances and say, is there anything that needs to come off this basket because of this 1% inflationary increase? And if there is it something so important that we don't want it to go off? And if we don't want it to go off, how do we make sure that that 1% increase is taken care of? Okay, so say, for example, if it's, say, electricity, okay, they will say, okay, what we can do, because this pressure is not universally felt, the businesses can absorb it, working families can absorb it, but these people can't. So if this adds 1p to the cost of utility, say maybe water or electricity and all that, for this year, because there's a historical data that supports consumption over a 10-year period, they will estimate that 1p increase and decide that they perhaps will meet it instead of reviewing the overall weekly award. They just take care of that 1p for that 1 year and pay it off. Okay? Because next year the pressure may be downwards. So it's not an intervention that stays. It is a one-off. Okay? But what we find happening sometimes is that there's an intervention in the economy here, and it stays. It's a permanent thing, and it doesn't respond upwards or downwards. It just keeps going up. So that's why we have so many distortions in the economy that you get the feeling like somebody hasn't sat back to take a complete look. As my governor will say, you think it through. You don't just think about what you want to do now. You think about the impact, the ripple effect. You know, you think about what will happen immediately after that decision is taken, or if that decision is not taken. And when you have an overall spectrum view, then you know you can step forward confidently or step back confidently.
Right. But, you know, before I let you go, most of the time we're thinking about economic growth, and some forget there's also something called population growth. The population keeps growing, even faster than the economic growth most of the time. You're looking at this climb. So talk to me about the size of Nigeria, over 200 million people. Are we getting too big as a country to be taken care of?
No, you cannot say that we're getting too big as a country to be taken care of. Even if we get to 300 million, we're not the biggest country in the world. We're still not the size of America. We'll probably be matching Europe. But you have China, a nation of 1.3, 1.4 billion people. And you have India, and they feed themselves every day, they clothe themselves, and they do all the things that they were supposed to be doing. No, I think that you know, in Anambra, for example, we have 8.5 million people, and we are constantly planning on taking care of them, not just today, but for tomorrow, like I said. So we're mapping out, building out roads, like I have said earlier, investing heavily in the road. We've done, in the last 2.5 years now, more roads than most governors have done in 8 years or even in 16 years. And we're doing that, as I said, doing more with less without borrowing. We built out we're planning out about 2,000 kilometers of fiber optics cable with IHS as our investment partner to ensure that there's greater connectivity of communication infrastructure around the state, so that if people are not moving around, they can at least communicate on the instant. So we're doing everything we can to ensure that the cost of living in Anambra is low.
Thank you so much. That's much we can take. So much to unpack there. Definitely I'm going to have you another time where we can, you know, talk about these issues. Mr. Christian Udechukwu is the Commissioner for Industry, Anambra State Government. It was great having you.
Thank you, Ladi, for having me on the program.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. All right, so there you have it. We're still trying to find out how to ease this inflationary pressure. Let's get to a point in Nigeria where prices, you can actually determine where prices are going, hopefully not up. Thank you so much for watching. That's it from me on Business Morning right here on Sunrise Daily. I hand things over back to the Sunrise Daily team.
Wondering what he's here to talk about? Cost of living. I mean, the rising cost of living so far in many areas of life appears to be proving almost unsurmountable. Added to that is the recent hike in the pump price of PMS. And even though we hear that certain aspects, certain foodstuffs are getting cheaper, just yesterday we heard from Mr. Bismarck Rwani saying that, you know, it's been said that price of tomatoes may have come down by 50%. If that is your experience, we would like to know. But let's have this conversation this morning with Mr. Kuro John Ngobo, who is head faculty and lead consultant, Purple Training and Consulting. He's a public affairs analyst as well. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Ayo.
Well, first of all, what do you make of the fact that on the one hand, we hear that the cost of inflation, inflation figures have slowed a bit.
Okay.
Cost of petrol has risen, and price of tomatoes may have come down. What's happening? It seems like some kind of ping pong that people are experiencing.
Okay, so first of all, inflation is essentially the steady rise in the prices of goods and services. And when we mention inflation figures, they are not snapshot. They are over a period of time. So even though, great news, the rate of inflation has gone down a bit in the last month, the truth is the impact will not hit the market immediately. So because inflation is computed over time, that the rate of its rising has reduced. So it's not rising as much as it used to rise, is what is the drop in the inflation rate. Not that the actual prices of goods and services have now dropped. That will still take some time. So with things like the price of tomato coming down and all, if we think about it seriously, some things are seasonal in nature. And for that reason, in certain seasons, there would naturally be more supply. Once there's more supply, price will come down. If demand remains the same and supply increases, price will come down. So there are things that we can play around. I think the two biggest issues with inflation today in Nigeria will still be PMS price, premium motor spirit or petrol, and the US dollar, because we are very import dependent.
Well, please help me understand. So if PMS is now a major factor,
yes,
and hitherto inflation figures have been largely buoyed by the cost of food.
Yes.
Please help us understand.
So the one that directly hits us the most is food inflation. And two things continue to drive that. One is, many things actually, but they boil down to two. So if there's insecurity, they can't plant. When they plant and they harvest, they must pay
some royalties, so they add the cost, transporting it to where they need to eat it. All those things are factors. But major issues would be what is needed to transport and store power. Because we don't have power in Nigeria, many people rely on diesel and PMS. So long as anything that is a cost input goes up, then the person who's selling will think, I have to recover my costs. So they add to their selling price. That normally happens. Then we're still largely import dependent. So we don't import we don't really import tomatoes. We import tomato puree and other tomato derivatives.
Which is funny.
Which is very funny.
We'll come back to that.
It is very funny. But because we import what is needed to process the tomatoes, we import what is needed to transport the tomatoes, to store the tomatoes. And naturally, when any of those factors change, the prices will go up. We believe that the prices have gone down a bit now because certain things are beginning to happen in the market. It could be things as simple as there's more supply. Okay. And when there's more supply, usually price will come down a bit. But we're not out of the woods yet.
Okay. Now, the subject matter, Mr. Ngobo, is the rising cost of living.
Sure.
The highest is, of course, as you mentioned, food.
Sure.
When people eat, when people are unable to eat, or the cost of buying food is expensive, most certainly there's going to be some issues raised on that. But then there is also the cost of accommodation added to the space. Not too long ago, I think within the past 2 or 3 weeks or thereabout, we hear that accommodation, the cost of accommodation in Abuja in particular, has risen so high, people now go to the outskirts, and quite a number of places in the city center we hear are largely vacant.
Sure.
So that there is that. We've also anyone who's been watching this space will see that the cost of health maintenance as well is something else that is also very, very concerning for so many people, out of pocket largely. Health insurance is not something people are embracing as much as they ought to embrace. So can you identify if there are things that could ameliorate the pains of the high cost of living that Nigerians are not taking advantage of? This health insurance thing, for instance, there is the belief that if we took advantage of it, it'll save on the cost of living. And there are other things like that people need to be aware of and consequently take advantage of.
I think the major ones would not be outside of the individual or the family, would be within. The first is the person. Many people in Nigeria really don't plan their finances. And how do they say this thing? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. People just get funds, do what needs to be done, and then continue to run, hoping, sometimes praying, that something changes. I think the major challenge we have in Nigeria today is planning well enough. And I'm sure it's clear at the government level, at the individual level. So ask a regular Nigerian, how much do you earn and how much do you spend in a month? They can tell you the earning part easily. Usually it's a salary. The spending part is difficult to tell. So Nigeria has a budget deficit of about 10 trillion naira this year. It's the same thing with most families. There's a budget deficit. We're spending more, or we need to spend more than we earn. A little planning could simply just make that work. And I'll show you how this works. Case in point, my first biggest example. If you pay rent every year in a country like Nigeria, why do you wait till the end of the year to look for rent when you earn every month? Why don't you save your rent every month? Now, the first thing that these challenges bring, people have shortfalls in their finances, it brings stress. We don't realize that stress itself can lead to the health implications we're trying to run away from, and so many other things. So picture somebody, say David or a Tunde or a Musa, who decides that I earn every month. My rent is 1.2 million naira a year. I will take out 100,000. I will find somewhere to put it, even make more money from it. But I'll do it every month from my salary, such that at the end of the year, I can pay my rent without stress. And I'm not stressing myself and the rest of the world to help me pay rent when it's time to pay rent. It's not easy, trust me, but it starts with some level of planning. And what planning does is it removes distractions, right? You are getting married, I have to buy a Ashwebi. If I have rent to cover for this month, I'm not going to buy you Ashwebi. Ashwebi is Nigerian for that uniform we wear. Yeah, simple things like that. I think the first thing is starting with us. We also take cultural issues seriously. People will look at me somehow. I need to do this in this way. Somebody dies, we have to spend a lot of money feeding the world and going back to our own spaces, things like that. I think it starts with us. People need to learn to understand money and to learn to plan it better. Of course, the natural thing to do is look at the finance equation. Income minus expenses equals profit or loss. If I increase my income or reduce my expenses, I would have more of profit or more of a budget surplus. If you can't control the income that well, but the expenses are within your control. So if you don't plan them, things will take the money away. I call it the spirit of money, the one that just talks to you when you have money and says, let's do this and that.
We'll come back to that because it makes some sense. But I mean, you talked about health insurance as being one of the interventions that people can take advantage of. Yes. Are there others that you can?
Yes. So health insurance, first of all, I want to just mention this quickly. People don't think about taking them because they think it's costs. It's actually cost savings. And I really think we should take advantage of it more. The more you do out-of-pocket spending for your health, the more money you spend. So is there anything else in the society today that we can take advantage of? Other kinds of insurance could also help. I spend more if my car gets damaged compared to if I had insurance cover. Now, I won't get the money back in a year if nothing happens to my car, but I won't spend that money fixing my car if I had insurance. I think insurance is the way to look at it, but it's not just it. It's protecting what you have, maintenance of the things you have, planning the funds in your hands. Most of it, I think, is tied to us, and then we can begin to plug them in everywhere we go.
Now, when you talk about spending, you talk about saving. I did a bit of a calculation. I failed maths when I was in secondary school, but I did a bit of calculation. Thank God for technology. That if you have a tank that gets you to spend on the average 50,000 naira per time that you fuel your car, and you use the car every day, there's a chance that you have to fuel that car once a week. And I'm saying once a week for those who conservatively. There are those who fill their tanks maybe twice or thrice in a week. So if you fill your tank once a week, 50,000 naira, and multiply that by 4 in a month, that's 200,000 naira. Now multiply that by 12. Now, there is no way, I don't know if anyone planned that kind of expenses when they entered into January this year.
I'm sure they
did. When you talk about us saving, and inflation has a way of creeping up on your savings, on your earnings, the cost of living is rising, your income isn't increasing, how do we balance it?
Okay, so I'll pick two things I mentioned. The first one is slightly cultural, how people will see me. Then the second one is planning. And I'll talk about this one issue. So wherever I live or wherever I work, which is usually the commute every day, do I have people I can do something as simple as carpooling with? Do I have to drive every day? Becomes a consideration. Now, don't get me wrong. Public transport as an alternative to driving is not exactly going to ameliorate issues because also it's expensive. So why am I driving the car by myself with just me in the car every day to work? Can we agree in my office, for instance, that I will drive 1 day a week and 5 of us will drive 1 day a week, but we all commute together to work and back if we live in the same area? What I would do is cut my 50K a week to become 50K a month. So I'm not earning more, but then there's an opportunity to save more. The issues around there will be, I have to talk to my colleague, or she will think I'm broke, or he will think I need money. How will people see me? Get those things out of the way. Do Mondays, I'm driving. You drive on Tuesday. He drives on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We live in the same area, we work in the same office. I will drive once a day. And I'm not buying fuel in your tank. I'm simply just joining you to work 4 days a week. That's why I said a lot of it is not outside of us. It's within us. It's how we do planning and how we address the way people see us and cultural issues.
But don't also forget that it sounds like you're making an excuse for government already. They have a responsibility. The federal government has a responsibility to ensure that life is not difficult for Nigerians. And just about 30 minutes or thereabout ago, my colleagues on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily were talking about the role of subnationals in easing the pressure, the cost of living on people. So are you making excuses for government?
No, I'm taking government out of the equation because if we'll be frank, government has failed us thus far. I'm being blunt about it. And the truth is we must continue to live whether there's government or not. I'll give you simple examples of how you can tell. I'm not talking of this government, governments. When was the last time somebody built a house around you and asked, please, where's water board connection to connect water to my house? When was the last time that happened? I can't remember. When was the last time we're building a house and we're not buying the poles to connect the lights to our houses? We've been government for a long time. we need to begin to understand the reality of life. We are fixing our roads, we're providing our own light, our own water. We've been government. Now, when government wakes up and starts doing things right, it will work for us. But in spite of government, we've survived till now, right? I'm not making excuses for government. I just took government out of the equation and said, let's begin to be real with ourselves. We need to continue to live. Subsidy is gone. Subsidy is still there. We are paying subsidy we don't know. I am paying out of pocket for fuel every day in spite of government. So maybe one of the realities you face is keep talking to government, keep supporting, praying for government, criticize government if they need to be criticized, but understand that government or not, we have to survive.
Okay, now that said, part of the interventions that are out there, part of the efforts, should we say, of government is, for instance, the alternative to fuel.
Sure.
CNG initiatives and all, with all of the conversations and all the fears that people are experiencing. My colleague Kayla, for instance, I think even more saying the mere thought of having a canister in their car is scary enough. So, but then there's that fear. There's also the argument that what you have in your tank, the tank in which you pour your fuel,
it's as dangerous.
It's as dangerous because it's not even as safe as the CNG canister. Where do we go from here?
One of the biggest challenges we've had between government and people in Nigeria is communication, effective communication. We have a national orientation agency, and it's time we began to shake things up in that space. Before we started talking about CNG and conversion and government putting money into training people to do it, the communication should have been clear. So I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, I learned that getting on a bike wearing agbada or babariga was bad. Because I remember one advert from a very old TV station where they were talking about road signs. And I learned what that yellow crossing lines meant from that advert on TV. And they showed a guy on a babariga on an okada, on the bike, a motorbike, and explained how he could get caught in the wheels, he could catch fire. And I shuddered, but I have not forgotten until today. I think the first thing we should have done was to properly let people understand what you're talking about today. Fear is the presumption that something bad could happen. It is not just from a religious perspective. Faith can counter it. Information can counter it too. If we're communicating better, the trust deficit will be lower. People will accept things faster. People will understand. I think that's the biggest challenge here. If government really wants us to begin to think that way, and it's good for us, if it's going to cost us less, if gas is easier to access, it's communicating it better. Maybe getting people who do skits every day to begin to work in that direction. Maybe.
Well, that's a good one, perhaps one consideration for them. But then now we've talked about, fuel. How about food? Now, when I was growing up, since you talked about where you were growing up, let me also talk about when I was growing up. My mom, whenever she wanted to wash pepper, she would get the water of the pepper she just washed and pour it somewhere
close to the house.
True. There was a garden there. So on the other side of the kitchen, that garden is also always there. So sometimes when we needed to make egg or something, we just went to that garden, pluck a thing or two. So that kind of thing would be what they call today urban farming. Sure. There is water, aqua farming. There is all kinds of things that happen now. But generally, farming, agriculture, it doesn't look appealing, such that we've heard this said that the people who are more into farming now, they are the older people. Yes. So young people are not as into it as they should. That's a risk for the future, isn't it?
True, it is. I have a 13-year-old daughter. We call her the Joe Princess. Since she was 5, whenever we travel intercity, she asks me one question. Daddy, why is there so much bush and people are hungry? We come from a space where we see beggars on the streets, then we see empty land, vast expanse, with greenery everywhere, and she doesn't get why we're hungry.
She's 13.
She's 13 now. She started asking when she was 5. That thing has troubled me till date. What you said is apt and very true. I don't want to speak to the whole of Nigeria. We can't all farm. Let's also be frank with ourselves. I think the least that should happen is anybody that has a square inch of space that you can call your own should put something there. So if you are not breeding butterflies, reduce the flowers and put tete and shoko and something in that space. Would be my own opinion. That would be the starting point. Everything we are supposed to be planting are the things we are wasting every day, like you said, with your mother's garden. So I think the mentality should first of all, let's even start with survival mode. I just want to eat tomorrow. The easiest way to eat tomorrow is to have the food available to you today. So what if we start doing that before we go into proper commercial farming? Let's just do the one where whatever waste I have, I find some way to make use of it. So any square inch of land you have, don't think interlocking stones first. Don't think flower gardens with lovely trees and aesthetics and cool. Let's put food there. Now, for those who don't have food and don't have land, you will find land that nobody is using, right? The chances are that if you begin to plant, an owner will show up. Then the owner will tell you to pay some stipend for using the land. They usually don't chase you away. They just tell you to pay some stipend for it. If you want to go commercial on it, that's one way to do it. And then we elite people who don't want to get our hands dirty, could we finance people to do the farming for us? Could we fund small-scale smallholder farmers? Could I find you with a portion of a piece of land that you are fenced in, but you can't build for the next 2 years? And can come to an agreement where one hungry person who's willing to farm can go there and plant on behalf of the two of us, and we split the proceeds. The proceeds don't also have to be cash. They could be the yams we planted. I'll give you one simple example that makes me know this can work. So I was living in Abeokuta and I had land in my compound. So one day we ate watermelons and gave someone to throw the seeds away. Usually there's some watermelon juice in it. So the guy, instead of throwing it away, did this all over the compound and walked away. Now I left it as grass because I didn't want to put interlocking stones and all. I had dogs in the compound and all of that. So one day I called the gardener and said, weed. And he said, oh God, please don't remove this one. Don't remove that. I said, what is that? I said, it's watermelon. Ayo, in 3 months, no fertilizer, nothing, I harvested 67 plum watermelons on land in Abeokuta. I sold 50, gave out a bit and ate the rest. That's my way of telling people this thing can work. We don't have to bring food from the north. We don't have to do anything special. Let's just think survival. And I think that will change the way we do things.
Oh, we could go on and on here. We could actually have a seminar here right now. How people can maximize whatever it is that they have, because I think, generally the issue really has always been, where do we start from?
Where do we start from?
Where do we start from? So for anyone watching now, if you can just do this in 30 seconds, what would be your first recommendation to anyone listening to you right now? Where do we start from on reducing the cost of living? I know you've said a few, but where do we start from?
I think the first thing is our mindsets. We should start with our mind. Focus on surviving you and your children and maximizing every resource available to you. That means where you need to cut. Where you need to change. Maybe custard and pap taste exactly the same. It's the quantity of sugar that changes it. Maybe those are the kind of things. I think it's the mind. I don't think it's outside of us. I don't think it's a function of the resources we have outside of us. It's a lifestyle change thing. We're still very concerned about how people see me, what people will say. People will not be there if the hunger becomes really bad.
Or people will be there and say, what were you looking at? Anyway, as I said, let's not start that seminar right now. Kuro John Gobo, Head of Faculty and Lead Consultant, Purple Training and Consulting. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
for your time this morning. Well, Kayla, I know you have a guest there. I'm sure you guys are already starting that cooperative conversations.
Yeah, indeed, we have. We have missed her. And she's here.
Well, I have missed you too. Hi. And I'm happy to be back. Happy to be back. Yes, someone had a good rest, but it's sad to see that the subjects haven't changed.
No, they haven't.
We're still talking cost of living, and I think that we have to commend our guest this morning for giving us some very commonsensical ways to, just live through this time. And I don't know, how are we preparing for the Edo elections? It's this weekend.
I mean, yeah, it's upon us. The conversations have started. The peace accord issue, PDP not signing that peace accord and having their demands and whatnot, put some sort of strain on the idea that we're going to have a peaceful exercise. We don't know what's going to happen. But the Inspector General of Police has read the riot act to everyone. So we'll be like this.
Fingers crossed.
We'll be like this. It's so good to see you again. Welcome back.
It's great to be back. It's great to be back.
Yes.
Quite a lot to, really mull on, especially with also the floods in Maiduguri and how you have also been on that matter as well. Wait to see just what will come out of whatever. Is there an investigative panel?
You know, I'm watching to see what steps the governor would take, because Professor Zulum is not someone who would let this lie down or let this, you know, just continue. I feel like there's going to be, I know that there is an investigation going on into Allow Dam, you know, where were the fault lines there, you know. So that particular investigation will in many ways lay down the law on how these things are supposed to be done and what people should be very careful of. You know, so that's something I'm looking for. But before we wrap up, we do have some breaking news from Kogi State. The director of the Yaya Bello Media Office, Mr. Ohiare Michael, he says Yaya Bello has honored the EFCC invitation. I think we're going to be giving you more on that in the news bulletins to come. But right now, I think we have to take a few messages. Would you like to do us the honor, Mark?
Oh, well, yes, I do see that we have quite a number of feedback. Is interesting to note that the seeming distrust now between government and Dangote, or like controversy is still on. And this feedback is from Professor Enakena talking about the conflict of interest by NNPCL and other interests in the presidency is frustrating and stifling Dangote refinery from operating its business. Nigeria will not attract massive FDIs with incessant interference that is in contrast with federal government fiscal policies in revamping the economy. That's the first one from Professor Enakena.
I like to call them our co-hosts on the program because they send us messages every day. Second person, Festus Akimboyewa, says there's no doubt that NNPCL bought Dangote's PMS at wholesale price. If that's the case, NNPCL must pass on the lower wholesale prices to Nigerians. Federal government, Dangote, and other stakeholders must not hesitate to call out NNPCL if they're ripping off Nigerians by not passing the wholesale price to Nigerians buying petrol at the pumps. And I think Professor Nakana sent another one this morning.
Well, I'm yet to see that particular
one.
Well,
he says in most states, he's really going in on the states on this one.
Yeah.
In most states where kidnappings, referring to our security issue earlier, in most states where kidnappings and banditry persists, there's a scramble for solid minerals. There's lack of proper border controls as people just walk through our borders without proper identification and verification. There's prevalence of illegal firearms. There's continuous herder-farmers conflict, non-prosecution of sponsors of these criminals, and terrorism. Thank you all so much for your messages this morning.
Yeah, just once again, the breaking news is that the former governor of Kogi State, Yaya Bello, has honored the invitation of the EFCC. It's not clear, just before we brought this to you, the former governor had been invited by the EFCC, not just invited, but also being prosecuted by the EFCC. And there's been, a bit of logjam in the case as the defendant had refused to show up in court. But it does appear that things are about to, the tide is about to turn. It's unclear what this will eventually spell out. But this is the news that we have for you, that the former governor of Kogi State, Yaya Bello, has finally honored the invitation of the EFCC, and we certainly will be bringing you more on that particular story as we have it.
Yes, and our correspondent actually said that she's actually requested for the visual, because I think this happened, it didn't happen today. I think it's happened yesterday or so. But all of the details will be coming up, so stay with us right here on Channels TV. And that is where we wrap it up this morning on Sunrise Daily. Have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maope Yusuf. Ayo, it's good to see you.
Well, it's good to have you back, Maope. Have a wonderful day, everyone. See you tomorrow.